Ivan Zemlyansky. Remember the name. He's going to take over the chess world. He is an up-and-coming chess prodigy. He just became a GM at the age of 14 from the Sharjah Masters 2024. People like Hans Niemann, many strong people competed in it. The fascinating thing about this kid is that he skipped the IM title. So he went from FM to GM. You know, many people are like, oh, FM to IM this many years, IM to GM this many years. He's like, nah, I'm so good. Give me the GM title. This has only happened 2 times in history. I believe once with Anish Giri and another time with Kramnik. So, I mean, the youngest GM in Russian history. That is fascinating because Russia produces, GMs, like Russian School of Chess assembly line for GM making. So to be the youngest from that country, pretty crazy. I did change the layout. So as you can see, it's gray now instead of black. Kind of looks like the Russian flag on chess.com. I think that's what they think the Russian flag looks like. They should probably check up on that. But we already made a video on that. So, okay, we're going to go over his 4 wins from the Sharjah Masters, his 4 decisive wins to clinch the GM title. He performed at a rating of 2780. Before we discuss that, we're going to be talking about some comments I get that, hey, you should speak slower. And then I have some people that say, hey, I like that you speak fast and get through the game. Some people have time on their hands. Other people don't. Some people do a lot of things. Other people don't. Could be for more variables. But today we are going to be talking about how you could just watch my video on half speed or not watch it. I'm going to get better. I think I'm improving over time at speaking to a camera. I know 4 months ago, I could not speak for shit in front of a camera. Obviously, when I give lessons, it's very easy, but that's personable. Like you're talking to someone. When you're speaking to nobody, it's freaking weird, to be honest, but I'm getting a hang of it. You know, I used to not be able to speak. Now I'm speaking too fast. I got to slow down. When you go off on a tangent or when you follow a game, like I love chess, I love everything about it. I just snowball and discuss everything. But I make YouTube videos. Or the reason I started YouTube was for my students. You know, you can't take a chess lesson every day. So it's like an extra lesson every single day for them to get better. So that was the reasoning. Sorry for the long intro. Majority of you probably clicked off the video, but those that did are missing out because Zemlyansky versus Fedoseev game 1. Ivan is black. We got d4, knight f6. He goes for a fianchetto and d5. He likes these Grunfeld type setups. He also likes the Najdorf as black. He also does not like e4 as white. So, savage. Okay, yeah, and the crazy thing is this kid gets flank attacked from the king side, queen side in every single game. And they just get crazier and crazier. So, Fedoseev does it on the queen side. But this kid sees no ghosts. He's just like, come at me, bro, and I'm going to win. So it's very crazy. c5, kind of like a Benoni, accepted. Kind of like a line in the London. But black goes knight a6 and wins the c5 pawn. Bishop e3, okay. Aiming at the knight, but that usually is an awkward square for the bishop. Except not really here because we've already committed our bishop, right? We don't want our bishop on that diagonal. We want our bishop on this diagonal. So not such an awkward bishop. b6, trying to get the hanging pawns in the center. We get a5 and bishop b7. He's like, I don't even see that pawn. Rook a3, a weird rook lift because, yes, it guards the knight, but it's not really x-raying through everything. Queen c8, queen a1, doubling up on the a file, and knight to e4, doubling up or putting these knights kind of in a chain, guarding each other in the center of the board. Also opening up this bishop to hit the queen, pawn, and knight, not in that order, not in that way. Now hitting the pawn and the queen. So good dark squared bishop. c3 making the bishop worse. Queen c7 connecting the rooks. And bishop c6 saving the bishop. Okay, we get knight to d4. The bishop slides back. He wants it on the board. Bishop takes knight. We get a trade and bishop e6. So again, another awkward square for the bishop. But maybe there's going to be a discovered attack on the queen in the near future. Who knows? c4. He centralizes the rooks on the semi-open file, making them better. White has the bishop pair, but that is a good knight. And white is not very coordinated. He's like, okay, things on the A file aren't really working out. Let me just re-coordinate. By the way, if you thought this was winning a pawn, it is not. Bishop takes c4. Isolated pawn on the light square. It's going to be a key feature of why this position favors black. So we don't get any of that. We get bishop b7, gaining tempo, losing a pawn. Bishop h3, and threatening back rank problems. White saves the rook, and look at this. You'd be like, oh no, a discovered attack on my queen. Let me move my queen. No, he's like e5. E5. And if takes, it's kind of like an 800 chess.com puzzle, right? Back rank checkmate. So we don't get that because he did become a GM this tournament. Queen b3, 2 birds, 1 stone. Queen e6, 1, well, actually 2 birds, 1 stone. 1 stone, 2 birds? What's the saying? You know what I mean. h5, continuing. Pins are annoying. Also, keep in mind, Ivan has less than a minute. Fedoseev has 8 minutes. Very hard to play. I mean, mad respect. That's all I got to say. Okay, so they're maneuvering. Black's trying to trade off, simplify the position because you're low on time, and you're going to go back and make incremental progress. Then you're like, hey, that's a fork. How do I get a knight on d3? Well, knight d7, knight c5, knight d3. Was that too fast? There's an idea. Queen d2, trying to pin the knight, and pawn h4. Prying open the king side. Pry open he does. He didn't want the pawn coming to h3. Now, look what this kid did with 50 seconds on the clock. Try to find it. Brilliant move. Bishop h3. I don't know. Chess.com made this like weird update, so I don't know how to show that it's a brilliancy. I don't know. Updates always make, or typically they make things worse. But the reason this is very good for black is this king is going to get checkmated, or white needs to give up a queen, right? If bishop takes, blocking f4, then there is f2. Black's got options. So he goes king h2. Then he comes back. He's like, I'm up a pawn. I'm just going to poke and prod until I make progress with my pawn. He outposts his knight, hits the base of the pawn chain. Then he makes progress with his pawn. And look at this. If bishop takes, queen takes, queen takes. Oh no. Down a queen. Psych. Knight d2. Knight e2. I know the coordinates, right? Bishop e3 and pawn c2, Fedoseev resigns. So, I mean, he kind of just blasted through this game like Swiss cheese, and that guy was over 2,700 FIDE. So, shows what the future will bring. All right, game number 2 against Abhijit Gupta, a 2,600 FIDE Grandmaster. Hope I pronounced that right. We get a type of English, and you see he likes this fianchetto in d5, and clearly his opponents have no respect, and they're just like, I'm chucking pawns at you. Look how he deals with it. So we get an endgame. The king can go to c2, so you don't need a castle when the queen's right in a queenless middle game. If the king's safe, you don't need a castle. h5, again, he's just like, the pawn's not there. In fact, I'm going to go b6, hoping you go a4, a5, and do the same thing. I ain't scared. So yeah, the pawn's just doing no. I don't know why I said that like that. But h6, you see 1, 2, 3. Padlock method, a good friend / student. Dylan told me someone called this the padlock method. Helped him understand it. Basically, you lock it. They waste more tempo than you do, so you gain tempo, right? The math adds up. Bishop e5, provoking f4. f4 has not been provoked. And look, at the end of the day, black is automatically blockading the isolated pawn. Crazy stuff. Now he aims at it. White defends it. Black kicks it out. White attacks. Black cannot take. Do not do this. Yes, you win a pawn. Yes, you guard your bishop. But then at the end of the day, the bishop hits the knight. The knight moves. The rook wins the bishop. You're down a piece. You're down the game. You lose. So don't do that. Move the bishop back. Save the bishop. Improve your pieces. Don't move your knight when you're in check. And then he just improves the pawn, the king, and then forks. So he's getting rid of white's only advantage. That is the bishop pair. Now look at this. The only blockaded pawn on the board is on a dark square. We are the person with the dark squared bishop. So endgames are going to favor us a lot. However, this is looking pretty balanced. What's going on? Okay. Shuts down any mobility on the 5th rank. We get a trade. Isn't this a draw? People are like, opposite colored bishops, always a draw. Well, you need to prove it. Yes, it's a draw if one person extends their hand for a draw and as does the other. But if neither does, then you got to prove it. Proving it is the hard part, right? Winning the one game, drawing the drawn game. We're humans at the end of the day. We all suck. So bishop takes a6. Now black is up a pawn. Now black's up 2 pawns. But that's because white wanted to pry open the queen side. And pry open he does. Black attacks the pawn. White moves the pawn. Black gives a check. Now black's going to win another pawn. But you don't got to win it yet. You could push a pawn. Be like, okay, you got to move your king, and then I'll take the pawn. King takes pawn. King c3. Black saves the bishop. And white resigns. Reason white resigned is black just pushes the pawn, and as you can see from the arrow when I forgot to record the video, that black's just going to go king d2, push the pawn. White needs to give up the bishop. We have a kingside majority on the king side, right? That's how that works. 2-on-1, so we're going to have a pass pawn that could be defended by our bishop. Their pawn's not going anywhere, so black wins the game. All right, very good stuff. Game 3, I believe. Open Sicilian. We got Ivan playing white now. A6, so not a Sveshnikov, right? Sveshnikov is e5, knight b5. This name escapes me, but we get f4. I'm comparing it to openings I do know the name of. A little bit of credit for that, maybe. f5, kicking the bishop. Now we have the open a file. We have the bishop pair. They're going to have to get d5 in. And they do it right away. And this is good for black. I like this for black because you're attacking the base of the pawn chain, right? So you got to respond. And 2 bad pawns is worse than losing 1 pawn, typically. So if black can punish white for that, he will be better. I mean, sounds like common sense. But I mean, yeah, the other thing is, I don't know if the chess.com engine like got weaker. Because for example, like here when I was reviewing it, it wanted knight d5, and then it just goes up and down and doesn't know what it wants. It's like people, they don't know what they want in life. So who knows what the best move was there. But black plays bishop c5, white castles king b1. Right, when you castle king side, you get the good king covering everything, but you get the bad rook sometimes. So you got to put on the e file if you want it centralized. Vice versa, when you castle queen side, you get the rook centralized, but you gotta guard against the a file. So you gotta shift the king over. So you either lose a tempo with your rook or you lose a tempo with your king. Pick your poison. Such is life. We get an exchange. Black picks up another pawn, but you know, they looked like 2 bad pawns, but funny, after you lose 1, it looks like 1 good pawn. Interesting stuff. We get a trade, and at the end of the day, white is blockading the isolated pawn. You don't want to take it because you need to guard c2 at the moment. So he rook lifts. He goes rook h2, guarding it this way. Black guards the pawn with his rook, and then he rook lifts to win it like this. Get Alyakin's gun while you win a pawn. All right, a4. He locks it. Padlock. Thank you, Dylan. Good name. Black goes rook e8, and white wins a pawn. So white's up a pawn, but how is he going to convert, right? Winning the 1 game. So he goes rook c1, guarding c2, allowing his queen freedom, right? Before there was queen takes rook. Now he wins another pawn. Black wins a pawn, white wins a pawn, and now white guards the base of his pawn chain. He has 2 passed pawns. This game is as good as over. They kept on playing for a little bit, maybe because he had 1 minute on the clock. Maybe because his opponent thought he could get checkmated. But again, he became a Grandmaster this tournament, so probably not. That would be my assumption, my educated guess. And yeah, he just gets his queenside pawns rolling. Right, that's the queenside, yes. And black resigns after a queen trade. Check. Right, because queen takes, rook takes. No one's stopping these guys. I mean, he's making it look effortless. Keep in mind, these guys are 2,700 FIDE. I mean, amazing. Last game, another black game. Leon Luke. Was that 3 black games? 3 decisive black games by him? What a G. All right, we get a Nydorf. He's like, I need to become a GM. I need to skip the IM title. We get this queen d2, g4, h4, castles queenside. You've probably seen this a million times. White's like, I'm going to checkmate you on the king side. Black's like, no. I'm going to checkmate you on the queen side. And then they battle it out, and sometimes one person is right, and sometimes both are wrong, and the game ends in a calm draw. I promise you this game does not. e5. You know, e5 is one of the most fascinating moves in the Sicilian because it's anti-positional. You create an outpost and you create a backwards pawn. Craziness. But if white can't capitalize on it and you get d5 in blowing open the position, then you push them back and you blow open the position and then you win. So, I mean, amazing stuff. I think Magnus likes this pawn structure. I've even seen him play like, yeah, the backwards pawns. He's really good with that dynamic play. Pawn g4, he's like, there's no pawn on g4. And then he plays b4. And white's like, whoa, there's a pawn on b4. You see the difference? You see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? H takes g4. White goes knight g3. I don't know what that voice was. Queen g5. Too slow. White needed to play h5. He's got to go. He's got to get going. He's like, you know, you're down a pawn. You're down 2 pawns. You got to blow open the king. He goes queen g5. He hesitates. Knight h7, gaining a tempo on the queen. Knight f6. I don't know what he missed. He really might have just missed knight h7, which is wild. But now black gets d5 in, and that is where bad things happen. Because this bishop's going to become a monster. These knights are great defensive effort over here on the king side. And yeah, we get pawn takes e4. Knight takes, queen e7. Take. Knight g5. Wow, I can use some water next time. A fork, and you're aiming at the bishop too. So white needs to sack the rook, but a switch. You take the bishop first. Queen takes, rook takes. Right? Queen takes, queen takes. Queen takes bishop, queen takes rook. Pawn takes. But do not take with the pawn. You would not become a GM this tournament. Queen b7. King moves. King gets checkmated. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. So he counterclaims the open file. He's still up a rook. He's like, I'm going to coordinate. Yes, you have 3 pawns on the queen side, but I have a passed pawn on the e file. I don't know about you, but passed pawns move fast. Sometimes my opponent has a passed pawn. I'm like, well, I don't really need to worry about it. It's in the center of the board. 5 moves later, I'm like, I'm an idiot. That pawn is no longer in the center of the board. And that's kind of what happens here. They shuffle. White aims at g6. We protect g6. We double up our rooks. He blockades the isolated passed pawn. White's rooks are doubled, so they're very, very annoying. And then eventually he gets the pawn up. Rook takes knight. What happened? A blunder under time pressure? He must have missed rook takes and queen f1 check, winning the rook. Such is life. That'll be the last time I say that. Cuts off a check. No checkmates. So, white resigns. Crazy game. Crazy game. Imagine we get e3 and then all of a sudden white's position is just back in business. You got to give up the queen, or you could get checkmate in one move. Crazy. But yeah, no, he doesn't fall for that. And because of that, white resigns. So these are 4 decisive games he got. I know he beat Hikaru last year on chess.com. He was 13. So this kid's a monster, up-and-coming beast. You'll hear a lot about him. Thank you guys for watching. As always, have a great day.